Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's another week of CinemAddicts, a new week that is. We are covering movies that are opening Friday, September 27th, 2024. Movies included, at least for this episode, which is part one. Again, we're going to do this for a second week in a row, and we're going to tell you why it's part one. We are covering Will and Harper, the documentary called The Body Politic, Lee, film starring Kate Winslet, Notice to Quit, and Amber Alert. All right. Eric Holmes, how are you, sir? You just finished Patreon. Are you terrified? Are you? Okay, that's dad jokes.
I'm working on a project in Florida.
You're working on a project in Florida. That is alluding to our recent Patreon episode, which we just recorded. Me and Eric Holmes will also be recording his version of his section of Patreon in moments. We covered the year 2017, and the films that we reviewed are The Florida Project and a creepy horror movie that Eric and I disagreed upon called Terrified, which is directed by Damien Rugna. So if you want to listen to that episode, please subscribe. Or no, not subscribe. Become a member of our CinemAddicts Patreon for the $5 catch-all fee. You get a bonus episode every month, early access to most of our interviews. What else do they get? Maybe spoiler stuff, our eternal gratitude. Eric, you're the showman. You're the greatest showman. What else do they get if they join our Patreon community? What?
Yes. They get all that stuff.
They get all that stuff. Free lessons from Eric Holmes on what? What kind of lessons are you going to offer them? Free stuff.
You know what? I haven't done this in a while, but I did get some. It's a family show, so I got some portobellos right here. Maybe we'll do
portobello.
I did one of those a long time ago for what was it? I did it for Baraka and Watership Down. It's been a long time since I've done it, and I've had those portobellos sitting on my desk for like probably 4 months now. So
were you? Oh, did you take any of those portobellos while you're watching Terrified? Because you and I disagreed on that.
No, they just been sitting there. I haven't touched them, and I've been like I remember doing that, eating portobellos and watching movies and reviewing them by myself. I never went. I think I sent them to you. I don't remember if you put them up or what happened, and I certainly didn't go back and watch it because I didn't want to. But if someone's got any ideas on something to review while eating some delicious portobello mushrooms,
that's fun to show.
Maybe we'll put that up on the Patreon as well.
Yeah, hit Eric up over at hamslam@gmail.com if you have any.
Hey Eric, this movie's insane. Take one of those portobellos. See if this makes you jump out a window. Well, a one-story window.
One-story window. Eric Holmes, before we start our Patreon, you said sleep. It's such a nice word or thought. Have you been sleeping the last 7 days? Because we're now on maybe 4 weeks or at least a month where you're just working your bleep off. Has that tapered off, or are you still working seemingly from 7 days a week, it seems?
Sleep has not been part of my life except for this week when I got to watch a movie called Sleep. I've gotten enough sleep, but I mean when you get up there in age, you can always use more. Okay,
you can always use more.
Eventually, I'm going to be lucky enough to where I sleep forever.
You're going to be like, that's not lucky. You're going to be lucky when we take that permanent dirt nap. That means we can't watch any more movies, Eric.
I mean, sleep is so good. I guess the good part about sleep is like when you wake up for a little bit and you realize you don't have to be awake for another couple hours and then you just pass out. Like that's such a great feeling. Like, oh, I get to go back to sleep. This is awesome. But I guess if you die, you don't get that. You're just dead. So probably nothing happens. But who knows? I'm looking forward to it. We'll say that. Well, I'm less scared of death than I once was.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that could be a hopeful or a mournful note. We'll see. You're going to hear Eric Holmes' review of Sleep later this Friday because that'll be our second part of the CinemAddicts episode. We just had a lot of movies to cover this week, okay? So for that episode, part 2, before we get to part 1, you're going to have Eric interview Plan B director Brandon Tamburi. He's also going to review the movie Plan B. Teaser, Eric, what can people expect from episode 2 with Brandon Tamburi and from Plan B?
They can expect good. Oh, with the interview?
Yeah, with the interview and the movie and just in general, just a tease for the second part.
Yeah, this was a weird one because it was Brennan hit us up personally about the interview, and which was cool. And
that rarely happens. He had moxie just to do that. That was very cool of him to just do that.
I think the last time that happened was with Alien Planet with Alan Maxon.
And the guy who did the boat movie. Remember the boat movie? I think then maybe he hit us.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, and it was on Middle Class Film Class, and I think Force 5.
Yeah.
Basically, what it boils down to, what I've noticed, granted, I think every interview I've done so far, like the people have been awesome. The biggest issues I've ever had was like Wi-Fi issues or something like that.
Yeah.
And that can kind of make the interview not go great, but that's never their fault. It's always,
the Wi-Fi, yeah.
Or if I really love the person I'm interviewing, I go full on Chris Farley show on them. And again, not their fault. That's all on me. But
not true. You were really nice with Isaac Florentine last week. You were cool.
I was screaming inside my head. I'm like,
by the way, very quickly, Isaac Florentine, what was that movie that he did last week? Hounds of War? Is that the movie that we reviewed? My mom saw it. She loved it. So nice. At least we have Greg's mom on our team, Eric. On that.
But with Brandon Tamburi, we got a little longer interview than normal, and it was a good one.
Okay.
And also, like when the director hits you up personally, it's like, oh God, I hope I don't hate the movie. But it turned out to be a good one. So good for us.
Okay, bad for me because I did not see it. Hopefully I will get to see Plan B at least by the end of this week. So part 2, interview with Brandon Tamburi for Plan B. Eric will also review Plan B. Well, he said it's a good movie. So that is a spoiler alert, but that's a good news spoiler alert. Then Sleep, he's going to review that Korean film. I'm going to review a Matt Dillon movie called Haunted Heart. Okay, so wait till Friday. Okay, maybe Patreon members, you might get this entire episode one big shebang. What do you think? We just give the whole shebang, family show, one big glop of one big glop of POO on them, on our Patreon members instead of part 1, part 2. I just thought of that idea right now. I'm POO. No, not OPP, POO. So what do you think? You want the glop? Does the Patreon members, do they deserve the big 90-minute glop we're going to just drop on them? What do you think?
Yeah, you know me.
Okay, I'm down. I'm down for the ride. Very, very good. Eric Holmes. For Patreon members, you're going to get the whole big glop within several hours. Patreon members, thank you so much for your support. But regular listeners, okay, before we get to our reviews, you're going to get part 2 on Friday. Thank you so much for listening to us on CinemAddicts. We have ads. We're making a little bit of money from the ads, so thank you. It helps support me, Bruce, and Eric. Do you know how much money we've already made? We're counting. This is a countdown to $1 million, by the way.
$69.
Eric, we're at least down to, we're probably $7.27 into the $1 million. So I'm just saying, CinemAddicts members, we appreciate your support. Mm-hmm. Every penny counts. Is that not true? Every penny counts towards the $1 million.
It does. Okay.
Once we make the $1 million, tax will be deferred. I'm going to pocket about 99% of it, and you and Bruce will get probably, and Anderson get, are you okay? 0.03%?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. So I'm just saying, you're look at this, no caring. We'll see. But with Bruce Purkey, I don't know if
I do this for the apple cider money every once in a while.
Apple cider. All right, again, no matter what, Patreon members, regular members, thank you so much for your support. Also, one last plug: if you want to hear our CinemAddicts episode ad-free, of course, Patreon members get ad-free. You can also subscribe and listen to our podcast episodes on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. All that stuff, all our podcast episodes are ad-free on that YouTube channel as well. Now let's get to reviews for movies coming out September 27th. First movie is, I feel tired. I've been talking too much. I'm trying to think of a movie to cover. Amber Alert. Eric Holmes, what can you say about this movie? I'm going to say the plot line right now. Quote, an ordinary rideshare becomes a high-stakes game of cat and mouse when Jack, I think that might be short for Jackie or Jacqueline, played by Hayden Panettiere, and Shane, played by Tyler James Williams, they receive an alert of a child abduction on their phones. Shane is an Uber driver or Lyft driver. He's a rideshare driver, basically. He picks up Jack on her way to some kind of meeting, and they see that Amber Alert, and they realize that, well, that Camry in front of them might be the Camry that is holding and abducting, kidnapped a young child. And that young child obviously is in danger. So what they do is they decide to, well, after listening to the Amber Alert, they decide to track down the car and figure out if that person is really the kidnapper. Running at around 90 minutes. It's directed by Carrie Bellessa, who co-wrote the movie with Joshua Oram. What's interesting is I looked at Carrie's IMDb credits in 2012. She came out with a movie called Amber Alert. And I think that movie is the same movie as this, but maybe different plot mechanics from 12 years ago. I don't know. Interesting because same title, same plot line, obviously different actor.
Same writers.
Same writers, different actors.
I wonder if she just remade her own movie.
Maybe. Okay, the movie co-stars Kevin Dunn. Most of you know Kevin Dunn for his role in Veep. We all know Kevin Dunn. If you don't know the name Kevin Dunn, when you see him or if you see him in Amber Alert, you're going to recognize him because he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the most recognizable faces in television and cinema. I don't know if Eric would agree with me on this, but he has a supporting...
He's one of those that guys. Like you see him and like you don't know his name. It's like, oh, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. Like
is that guy? Yeah, very cool, interesting character actor, Kevin Dunn. He stars with Hayden Panettiere and Tyler James Williams.
He was the dad in the Michael Bay Transformers movie.
Oh, very cool. All right, okay, cool. Well,
there you go.
We're going to have some Transformers stuff later on in the episode with a recommendation or not from Eric Holmes. Amber Alert, Eric Holmes, your review of it.
I like this movie, and so let's go over some things first. There's a lot of this stuff. What was that movie with where they're in the call center and they remade it with Jake Gyllenhaal?
The Guilty.
The Guilty. This reminds me of The Guilty, but instead of from the perspective of the call center, it's on the road. Like you're following the people. Tyler James Williams plays Shane. He's a Uber driver, and Hayden Panettiere plays Jack. She talks him into giving her a ride, and then they get the Amber Alert. They see the thing and follow the person. And the weird thing about it, they make a big point of this in the movie, is the mom's looking for her kid. She's going to the cops, and it's like do something, put down an Amber Alert. And it's like, do you got a license plate number? And she's like, no, it's black Toyota Camry, just put it out there. And they're like, that's like one of the most popular cars, and just the lines are going to be flooded with anyone that ever comes across a black Toyota Camry, which will be everybody. And I really like that part of the movie because it, like, once they put out the Amber Alert, like they had the picture, so they decided to put it up. And once they do, it really illustrates, like, sometimes tools don't do, like, if you don't use a tool in the proper way, it doesn't function properly, obviously. If you put out an Amber Alert with a very broad descriptions, you're just going to tie up the phone lines and you're not going to get the information you need. And then so when that happened, I'm like, well, how are they going to, like, clearly these are two of the main characters. So these are clearly the two characters. At first I thought that the Uber driver was going to be, I didn't notice what car he was driving at first, but I thought, oh, is he driving a black Toyota Camry? Like, is this going to be a mistaken identity thing? Or what? Wasn't that at all. But then it became, well, how are they going to find him? And then once they find the car, how are they going to know that it's them? Like, these are just all like stuff I'm thinking of. Like, if you're writing this, how do you go from point A to point B? Because you got to take a bunch of, there's got to be a lot of really great coincidences and logic leaps you got to take to get there. And they did. There's some stuff in here that I'm like, that doesn't quite make sense. But at the same time, I was still in it. I think I was talking on the chat between you and Bruce. This movie reminded me of a lot of A Quiet Place. There's so many things in A Quiet Place that, like, on paper would just bug the hell out of me. Or I just roll my eyes and go, that's stupid. Or that wouldn't happen, or why would they put that in the movie? But I don't care, because, like, I'm watching in the moment, even though I'm thinking those things, I'm still invested in The Quiet Place. I'm still loving it. And then once I watch it, I'm like, I'd watch that again. It's kind of similar deal with Amber Alert. There's a couple things that happen that, like, just kind of roll my eyes at, but I was still in it. There's one part about 40, I think it was 48 minutes, because I looked at the time when it happened. I think it was 48 minutes into it. And I'm like, oh my God, they went there. Oh, that is so messed up.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. No. I didn't think 1 second. No.
I should probably leave it there because, that part, like, got my heart racing. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe they just did that.
Right.
And then stuff goes on. I would say the third act of this goes a little too silly for me.
Okay. Fair.
And it kind of lost me a little bit in the third act. But by that time, like I was so invested in how they're gonna hopefully catch the kidnapper,
Yeah.
or how the kidnapper is gonna get away, or however that's gonna play out.
I will say, as
I
silly
was
as
so
the third
invested.
act. Yeah, it was.
The third act didn't bother me.
It was
I just didn't
silly.
like it.
Yeah, even though it was silly, you can understand with leaps of logic or whatnot. It was still tense. You're
Yeah.
still wondering what's going to happen, right? So I think maybe that might be the what either the shackles or the strictures of the genre that it be have those thriller elements maybe. But I think overall, it's a very tasteful film, surprisingly tasteful movie,
I
right,
think
Eric?
the
Well told. Oh, Eric, sorry.
title card at the end.
What?
That's I wouldn't have went with that title card at the end.
Oh, really? Okay, okay.
That seemed a little kind of a little on the nose, but I'm not angry at the movie for it.
Okay.
It's an important thing to say, and important information to get out there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like when you watch a movie that's kind of plays more as a thriller, and then you have like a real serious message at the end, it's like, I don't know, like that seems like something you would do at the end of a documentary,
Okay, that's fair.
not a thriller.
Yeah.
I would also say that like some of the stuff the characters do are really clever. The bit with the iPod,
Right. Yeah.
I was like, that's
I had no idea.
That's just a great damn idea. Do that all the time. But then you get the information that you need, and then you back off. Because one of the stupidest thing they did was like follow him out in the middle of nowhere, like literally like basically tailgating him the whole time. I'm like,
Sure.
I think he knows you're there. You might want to call the police or do something at this point.
There's a well done confrontation in the movie as well, where we're not going to get too much into the specifics, but it's well written and well acted. I thought it was a good confrontation.
That was an example of it was a coincidence, almost too perfect of a coincidence, but it kind of worked.
Yeah, worked.
Because that was another scene where it's like, ooh, what's going to happen? Like, there was only one way this can happen. And then the thing happens, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. It took, like, that totally makes sense. But then now how do you get back on track after that? And then they kind of pull that off pretty well, too.
I have a question regarding the ending that I'll probably ask you after we're done recording the show, as of the Amber Alert thing. But I like the ending. I mean, I thought the ending was pretty realistic. So that's just, yeah. I'm going to echo everything you said about Amber Alert. Surprisingly tasteful. I really enjoyed Hayden Panettiere and Tyler James Williams in their respective roles. It's a straight ahead thriller. Did its duty. It wasn't exploitative, it seemed. I thought it was just a really well done film. I think this is just a solid straight down the middle 3.5 star recommend. Yeah, this is one of these things is if you like this genre, it'll fulfill those needs. And it gives you a little bit of, I think I was even verging towards 4, to be honest, because there's an extra bang for your buck situation in the way things play out at the end, which I really appreciated. Eric, your final thoughts and ratings on Amber Alert.
Yeah, I think on paper, this would be like a 2-star movie, but I had such a great time. I think this is like the execution kind of elevated what was on paper somehow. And I just like, as many weird filmmaking decisions and story decisions that there were, I was just in, and I really enjoyed it. I'd probably go 4 stars on this.
Oh, very good. 4 stars for Eric Holmes.
So that just shows you if you can execute something. They say you can't make a good movie out of a bad script. I didn't read the script. Maybe the script's awesome and maybe it lowered it. I don't know, but I suspect that they may have polished this up a little bit and made something greater than what it could have been otherwise.
Very good. 4 stars for Amber Alert from Eric Holmes. 3.5 stars for me. Both Eric and I, we both recommend Amber Alert, which will be in theaters and on demand September 27th. Now, what's not on right now, obviously, I was trying to look for a Rotten Tomatoes score for Amber Alert. Currently, no ratings. So this might be actually rated later in the week, but
I assume that it's going to be kind of low rated. Like there's going to be some people that pick up on the things that I thought was kind of not great.
Yeah.
But then like, and they might just like focus in on that. But I think there's going to be other people like myself that's like, that recognize the flaws in it, but it's like, I don't care. I'm at the edge of my seat seeing what's going to happen next. So let's just go on this ride.
There you go. We both recommend it. Amber Alert, and Eric and I were on the same wavelength that certain movies like this, not going to name any names, Lionsgate, Quiver Distribution, Vertical, a lot of these movies that are pushed to the side Eric and I find a lot of value in them. Hopefully, I'm sure there are so many people like me and Eric out there who do find value in these movies. So hopefully you find a bit of value as well on Amber Alert. Now, for something on a higher level, seemingly so, than Amber Alert, because this might be talked about come Oscar time, is Kate Winslet's new movie, Lee. She's a producer in the film as well, and it centers on the true story of American war correspondent and photographer Lee Miller, again played by Kate Winslet. The director is cinematographer Ellen Kuras. She is a renowned DP, and it centers on a pivotal decade in the life of Lee Miller as she reflects and looks back on her time in World War II as a World War II photographer. Andy Samberg. Andy Samberg plays David E. Sherman. Well, I don't know. It'd be interesting if Adam Sandler had this role, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Andy Samberg plays David E. Sherman, her loyal confidant and co-worker, fellow photographer who escorts Lee Miller in these trenches of World War II. A lot of the movie centers on how they travel from place to place and take photographs. With the war, you're going to see a lot of very harrowing scenes, a couple of them with Lee Miller in the throes of combat and trying to survive. Also, there is a very memorable sequence where they visit a concentration camp as well towards the third act. It is a well-shot film. I don't want to look. People will say this is an Oscar baity movie, and it is because Kate Winslet is a shoo-in to get an Oscar nomination. She deserves it, but it's a very interesting look at Lee Miller. I had no idea who she was, maybe because I'm ignorant with history, but it spotlights a very interesting artist and photographer in Lee Miller. And I'm glad Kate Winslet and Ellen Kuras shined a light on this very important figure in history. Now, regarding Adam Sandler or Andy Samberg does a decent job as David E. Sherman, and I'm sure a lot of people will praise him for this, but it's so hard for me to actually look at a dramatic role from Andy Samberg thinking, this is the guy from Hot Rod, dude. This is the guy from, I don't know, this is the guy from Brooklyn, what is it, 911 or something? What is that?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is that the name of the thing? Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Brigsby Bear.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good actor. He's fine in this. It's just,
I got a great plan. What is it? Next scene is just a TV flying out the window.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's one out of the three people in Lonely Island. It was so hard. I love Hot Rod. He is the man. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? Thank you, Eric Holmes.
Pop star, never stop.
He's so good in that. So he's fine in this. It's just my prejudice at looking at Andy Samberg. I'm thinking in the middle of a very dramatic there's a dramatic sequence regarding his character where I knew he was not going to break down into song or make a joke, but the prejudice in me was thinking that was going to happen, but he's fine in this role. Now, another prejudice in me. This movie co-stars Andrea Riseborough, and she plays Audrey Withers. She's the Vogue editor who is the boss of Lee Miller. She helps send Lee Miller out to the front and have her take these pictures. So hopefully some of these pictures will be taken and shown in the display of all these Vogue magazines, okay, these Vogue issues. And Andrea Riseborough, she has a couple of lines and she looks what's great about her, she looks so different in every one of her movies. Eric Holmes, I'm going to speak for Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey, over at CinemAddicts, we all love her. We all love what she does. She is a master actress. She's a master actor. She's like tops of the tops. My prejudice was thinking, yes, Kate Winslet's so good as Lee Miller, but man, what would Andrea Riseborough have done with this part? You know what I mean, Eric? When you see someone who's a supporting actor and the lead actor does such a great job, but you're thinking, man, but I love that person. I wonder how she would have done. That's nothing against Kate Winslet. That's more on me. Andrea Riseborough is good in this movie as well, but this is the Kate Winslet vehicle. There's also something that Eric Holmes does not like is the bookends of Lee. It starts off with she's talking to a journalist and she's reflecting on her life. So I don't know if you like the elongated movie being one complete flashback, Eric, but there is something that happens. The flashback way it's done in Lee is very interesting. So I like that as well. So I was surprisingly moved and enjoyed Lee. And my rating for Lee is 4 stars. Currently, it's 67% at Rotten Tomatoes. Expect an Oscar nod for Kate Winslet. Again, my prejudice regarding Andy Samberg, and Andrew Riseborough. My apologies for that. But yes, Eric Holmes.
It said 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. On IMDb, it's got a perfect 6.9 out of 10 stars. So
very good. 6.9.
This could win all the Oscars. Who knows?
We also have to mention that the movie is one of the anchors of the movie is Lee Miller's most popular photographs or her most iconic photo is her posing in Hitler's private bathtub in his apartment. So that's a very iconic photo. But there's obviously much more photos that she took. There's a lot of a very interesting life she has. Also, the movie has a great cast. It stars Alexander Skarsgård as Roland Penrose, who ends up being her soulmate. Also, there's Marion Cotillard. We all know Marion Cotillard from La Vie en Rose. And Nomi Merland. We know her from a black and white movie in France. I forgot from a couple of years ago that you loved, Eric. I forgot the name of that, but she's a star of Portrait of a Lady on Fire. She was a very good actress. So there's some really, really great actresses and a great ensemble, and Skarsgård's in the movie as well. So some really good stuff. I'm trying to look. She was also in Naomi Morland. She was also in Baby Ruby, which we reviewed. What was the movie that Eric loved so much? Yes, Paris 13th District. If you have not seen that from 2021, my God.
That was a weird one because that was a movie I should have hated, but that was really good.
How come more people should see Paris 13th District, Eric? Right?
They probably looked at the poster of the trailer and thought the same thing I did at first. Oh, God.
It's such a beautiful film. Okay.
But I do want to point out, because I haven't got to see Lee, but the director, Ellen Kuras, I believe.
Yeah.
She's a cinematographer, worked a lot with Michel Gondry.
Oh, very cool.
And I was wondering if does Lee have any of those kind of Michel Gondry kind of strange like camera tricks or editing things or anything? Like, did any of that translate to her directorial feature?
That's so interesting. That's a great question, Eric, because you worked with Michel Gondry, and I'm assuming she did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which starred Kate Winslet. No, it's more of a straight ahead DP visual style. But but the good thing is, she knows how to compose a shot, right? So it's going to be a good looking film no matter what. That's the one thing, whether you love or are lukewarm or dislike Lee, you know it's going to be a well shot film. All right, so that is Lee. It's going to be
the cinematographer she did get was DP on The Pianist. So very cool. I mean, that again, didn't see it, but that makes sense for what I believe this is.
Okay, Lee the Pianist, family show, September 27th, only in theaters. All right, Dad. Sorry for the dad joke, folks. Sorry,
that took a second.
That's horrible. That's what I was going to say. That's what whatever said. But horrible. So Lee, 4 stars for me. Listen to Bruce Purkey, the cinematic. Are you taking care of him in the attic, Eric Holmes? I know you haven't had sleep. No. Okay, Eric. Bruce is.
I didn't even change his water bowl this week.
Okay, that's okay.
He might have a little dry throat when he records his bit, and he's lucky I let him record anything.
Okay, Eric. Here's the thing: you gotta feed the beast. He's not a beast. You gotta feed the animal that is Bruce Purkey, aka the cinematic. Because he provides all of that interesting film reviews at the end of the show. And don't worry about the money. The money's only going to me and you and Anderson. He doesn't get a cut because maybe feed you some of our money, our millions, for some kibble. Can you at least give me some kibble?
I hear you, and you're not wrong, but I'm a sadist, so I cannot do that.
Okay. I thought that was the name of a movie we're covering right now. So we'll get to that in a bit. Next movie up is a film called Notice to Quit. Yeah, that sounds like the cinematic Bruce Purkey. After hearing what he's been abused, he listens to the show and he growls. He growls at all the bad things we say. Yeah, you hear, because you're working. He's growling while he's listening to our podcast, which you can listen to on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. By the way, yeah, he's speaking of Notice to Quit. Bruce Purkey, aka the
Bruce.
Cinematic.
If you're gonna sneak out of your attic and listen to this, you better smash that like button.
Oh yeah, smash the like button. Please, cinematic Bruce Purkey. Please subscribe to all of our platforms, please. And then maybe Eric Holmes will get you some kibble. Now, Notice to Quit. Okay, so I checked this movie out. It's written and directed by Simon Hacker. I'm in the bag usually for movies set in the middle of a sweltering New York City day within a span of, I think, 24 hours. So I'm in the bag for Notice to Quit. That said, this is a really well done movie. It centers on Andy Singer, a struggling New York City realtor played by Michael Zegen. You might know Zegen from his work in The Incredible Mrs. Maisel. I've seen episodes of that show. I really love that. Or is it The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Can you look that up?
I think it's The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
The Marvelous Miss Maisel. right?
Or Mrs. Maisel.
One of those.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
We apologize to Michael Zegen and people at Notice to Quit and the Marvelousness. I'm going to look that up in a second. But so this New York City realtor, played by Michael Zegen, he is caught in the cycle of renting rundown apartments, and he's a little bit of a creep because when he rents, not only does he rent these rundown apartments to people, once he gets in the opening, he gets the key to one of the people who are moving out of the apartment. And he says, oh yeah, I promise you're going to get your security deposit. But what he does is as soon as they leave and they trust him with the keys to the apartment, he takes the appliances out of that rundown apartment and sell those appliances to just local people who give him a little bit of cash. And that's not a good thing. He's corrupt, but he's corrupt. He's also a failed actor. He's a failed father. Again, this guy's Andy Singer, played by Michael Zegen. He's for most of the movie, he's highly unlikable. That might be the barrier to entry for Notice to Quit. What happens is his world is completely crashing down. He's going to be kicked out of his own apartment. And then lo and behold, he is tasked with taking care of his estranged 10-year-old, it looks here, 10-year-old daughter. Yeah, 10-year-old daughter, Anna, played by Kasey Bella Suarez. I actually interviewed Kasey Bella Suarez last week. She plays Anna, 10-year-old kid. The rest of the movie deals with Anna hanging out with her dad. Again, her dad is Andy. Andy and Anna, they hang out for a day in New York City specifically. I don't know what specific borough in New York, but it's a hot day and everyone's stressed, especially Andy. And the daughter, all she wants to do is spend time with her father. But the father, he has other things on his mind. He's trying to make money and he's being a pretty bad dad. So with all this unlikable qualities, why should you watch Notice to Quit? It's funny. It's really good chemistry between Michael Zegen and Kasey Bella Suarez. And it's great. Even though the guy is unlikable for a lot of the movie, it has its heart in its right place. And it's a really well done story, really well shot indie film. And you could really feel what life is like in New York. I don't know when this movie was set, but it's a really fun movie going experience. What's great about this is this indie movie is only in theaters come September 27th. Kasey Bella Suarez, she's now about 13 or 14. She was 10 or 11 at the time. She is an actress to watch. Michael Zegen, I've seen him. Yes, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He was in 43 episodes of that series. I hear it's a great show. I need to start watching television now and again. But I remember watching him in a couple of episodes of Mrs. Maisel. I've seen about 4 or 5 of those eps. He's very good in Notice to Quit. And even though Andy Singer is highly unlikable for a lot of the movie, you end up understanding what's going on and why he is like that and why he's estranged from his wife. Really good relationship, family drama from writer-director Simon Hacker. This is a movie that I hope does not get buried, even though it's coming out in theaters September 27th. This is like a movie gem to watch. Notice to Quit. Please don't quit on this movie. Sounds like a movie. Don't quit on Notice to Quit. Actually, Notice to Quit. You're hired. I'm giving you 4 stars. Okay, so that's it. September 27th in theaters.
These puns are getting out of control. Keep going.
Okay. No, I've never had someone say that to me. All right, Notice to Quit. We're done with that.
I didn't give you your pink slip on these puns. Keep going.
Don't treat me like Bruce Purkey, Eric Holmes. I'm no cinematic. We love Bruce Purkey, by the way. If you want some serious reviews, he's going to be coming up in a second. Now, finally, there is.
What was the score on Notice to Quit?
Yeah, Notice to Quit for me is my bad. I'm giving it 4 stars for Notice to Quit.
All right.
Yes. Don't quit on Notice to Quit. You're hired. 4 stars for Notice to Quit. And of course,
4-star Greg just doesn't quit.
Yes. If you can't make it there, you can. If you make it there, you can make it anywhere. And yes, Notice to Quit is a movie to watch. I really, really enjoyed this film. It really had its heart in the right place. And also, comic Robert Klein. I haven't seen him in a while. He plays the father of Andy Singer in the movie. Really fun movie. Finally, for this episode, Will and Harper. Eric Holmes, are you a fan of Will Ferrell at all? Movies in general? Yeah. You're okay. Give me some.
Yeah, like his comedies, like the dumber the Will Ferrell comedy, the more I like it. Which I guess goes
like
kind of
old school, like movies like old school or what?
Well, yeah, just like
Anchorman. Yeah,
I think the only comedy, the only movie that I saw his in theaters that I actively did not like was Semi-Pro, because like I was real excited for it, and that was a little too dumb for me. But other than that, like, yeah, when the dumber Will Smith movies get, the more I like them. Loved him in SNL, obviously. And
Sherlock Holmes? Did you say Sherlock Holmes? I haven't seen the one movie.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
But Step Brothers was one of those weird ones.
Fun.
Like, I did not like that the first time I saw it, but my mom loved the crap out of that movie. Like, she would just like not stop watching it, and then just through attrition, she wore me down. I'm like, I kind of love Step Brothers.
I can't believe last
night I was running karaoke, and I can't remember what song someone did. Someone did a song, and at the end, someone in the crowd goes, "Catalina wine mixer." But it's a family show. I didn't say the whole thing, but
Catalina wine. Very, very good. And last week, when you interviewed Juan Pablo Raba for Long Gone Heroes, you threw in a Ricky Bobby reference, and he actually got the Ricky Bobby reference. Wasn't that cool?
I don't know what to do with my hands. I think I misspoke and said it was Anchorman at first, but yeah.
Yeah, but then he mentioned Ricky Bobby. Yeah, very, very interesting. Okay. The reason
why love Will Ferrell.
Yes. And you might we look. Friday, Netflix. Yeah, Friday, September 27th is the premiere, at least on Netflix. It's been in theaters and select theaters last couple of weeks. Is a documentary Will and Harper. Quote, 3 years ago, Will Ferrell was filming a movie when he received the most surprising email. His dear friend of nearly 30 years was coming out to him as a trans woman. That friend was Harper Steele, a writer he met on the first day of SNL. And over the years, they've worked together on numerous films. They are very close friends. But this is when Harper Steele was Alex Steele. Okay. But now Alex Steele has transitioned as a trans woman named Harper Steele. So over 6... Yes.
Real quick, just to touch on that and maybe you don't know the answer because I sure don't. When you say they were so and so, they're now this person. Is the proper way to go about it saying they were always this person, but they previously were known as that person? I just want to throw that out in case someone's listening to this, just screaming at the YouTube or screaming at the podcast.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, they've always.
I don't know the rules. I don't know what people prefer, but I figure I just throw that in there just in case that's a thing people get
good point.
Angry about.
Yeah. I mean, it's explained in the movie that Alex Steele has always felt like Harper Steele. The name Harper is given, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but Harper is inspired by the writer Harper Lee from To Kill a Mockingbird, how Harper always felt very comfortable within that name Harper, and that was her decision. And what's great, you get to really know Harper Steele as a trans woman, as a very close friend of Will Ferrell. Obviously, Will Ferrell is having, to your point, Eric, it's like having a new friendship with another person, right? You built a bond on the past, but that past is actually changed with transitioning into a trans woman. And that's what makes Will and Harper so interesting, is because they are such good friends. They have a great past together. Harper is telling Will that you can ask me anything about my life and don't feel nervous about it. And I'll ask you. I'll just ask and I'll answer. And over the 16 days, the two go on a road trip from New York, where Harper Steele, she lives there, to Los Angeles, the domicile of Will Ferrell. Out to Los Angeles, obviously the requisite road trip will start off in the sort of the upstate area of New York all the way to the end of Los Angeles, where it's not a spoiler because when you go from coast to coast, you're going to have to end with a beach shot, right? It's a great scene at the beach.
Ideally, you start with a beach shot and end with a beach shot.
That's true. That's a good.
That's coast to coast.
Coast to coast. Well, at least half of the coast, the West Coast, is covered at the end of Will and Harper. Beginning starts over at Harper, her house, over in New York specifically. And it's really good stuff. It's a road trip documentary that you really get to know how much they care about each other, and they meet different people from different sections of America as Harper starts to understand. She feels, don't want to give too much away, but she wants to feel comfortable in her own skin. And when Harper has had a lifelong passion for the road trip, and she's gone on she's gone back and forth from one side of the U.S. to the next, and she's done several road trips in her life. But now, as public as Harper Steele is, she's nervous about meeting these people, this cross section of people in the same areas and not getting the same acceptance that she would beforehand when she was known as Alex Steele. Okay. So that is a very interesting documentary. I loved Will and Harper. It's, I think, almost 2 minutes, not 2 minutes, 2 hours, but it didn't feel like 2 hours. It felt like 20 minutes. That's what I meant.
You said Alex Steele?
Yeah, Alex Steele.
Oh, that's
I believe.
There's a YouTube channel I watch, Alex Steele, just like forging.
Oh, really?
That same name, spelled the same, looks like. So,
and of course,
it has nothing to do with this movie. But as soon as he said Alex Steele, I was like, oh, I must have missed it the first time.
Yeah. So what's interesting also is since it has Will Ferrell and Harper Steele is a comic writer, it's a very funny movie too. Not funny documentary too, with its share of very sweet moments. So I was in the bag for Will and Harper, and for people who have questions about the trans community, about transitioning, all this stuff. This paints it spotlights this one person who is a trans woman, and you get to learn a lot more about her life. And I thought that was really value added as a documentary. It's entertaining. It's touching. For me, Will and Harper, 4.5 stars, Friday, Netflix.
This sounds like it's the other side of the coin tonally, is the movie Transition with George Bryan, where he was in, I think it was Afghanistan, or like basically infiltrating the Taliban. And then he was trying to keep the fact that he's trans away from them because, like, it was not will they accept me or will they not? It was, will they kill me or will they not? This seems like just a lighter version, but with kind of same themes, I guess. And ideas.
I should, that's a movie that I should have actually seen. And yeah, you know what? Did I say Andrew Steele? I said Alex Steele, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it not Alex Steele?
It was Andrew Steele.
Oh, okay. That's why I missed it the first time.
All right, wait.
Alex Steele's YouTube channel is really good. You should.
You know what? Let me just cut that. Let me cut that out right now. So
no, don't, because then we get to talk about Alex Steele.
So I apologize. That is not. I looked it up. It was not Alex Steele. It is Andrew Steele. That is my complete. Still a 4.5 star movie, and it was previously.
Oh, it's not Alex Steele. It goes down to 4 stars.
Yeah, now it's not Alex. And so again, my apologies. Andrew Steele before. Okay, she was known as Andrew Steele before. Andrew Steele has 2 kids, and an ex-wife. Okay, now it's very interesting how you get to see Harper Steele reconcile with her past as a dad. Is she still a dad to her daughters? And you'll get to see what happens do they accept Harper Steele as Harper Steele or as Andrew Steele? There's a really resonant lunch that she has with her daughters as well. So
that is a good. Did they get into that? Like
they do answer that? They do.
Awesome.
They do answer that. So that's answered in a nice breakfast meal with them.
I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So again, Will and Harper, Netflix, September 27th, Rotten Tomatoes, 98%. And finally, yes, Harper Steele was formerly Andrew Steele, not Alex Steele. My fault. Notice to quit on my accuracy. So all right. So you know what? Maybe you'll do a rewind on Will and Harper next week and tell us what you think. Before we go,
might eat some portobellos beforehand.
A couple of portobellos. There's a movie quick recommendation from Eric Holmes, Transformers 1 Untold. Yeah, it's just called Transformers 1. It's directed by Josh Cooley, the filmmaker behind Toy Story 4. What can you tell us about Transformers 1?
Since I was a kid, I was like Transformers, like playing with the toys, like watching the cartoons. Loved the original animated movie. The second half kind of isn't as great as the first half, but it still mostly holds up for me these days. And then Michael Bay got a hold of them, and I quickly lost interest in Transformers. The biggest problem with Transformers 1 is not enough human characters. That's why I go to the Transformers movies to watch I hate the human characters. No, this is all Transformers all the time on Cybertron. The story's a little, because this is...
I was going to laugh, but I was drinking water. Sorry, Eric.
Yeah, don't spit that out. It wasn't that funny anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm sure I'm the first person to ever point that out. The Transformers movie starring Transformers, who would have thunk it? But this is Optimus Prime. Before he's Optimus Prime, he's Orion Pax. Megatron's not Megatron. He's D16. Like they haven't became their final form yet. I think Bumblebee is B something. You do get Starscream voiced by Steve Buscemi. That was pretty cool. Lawrence Fishburne's Alpha Trion. Scarlett Johansson is Alita 1. I thought Alita 1 was what the hell is her name in the RC? I thought her character was RC, but then RC shows up later. And so Alita 1 must be a different character. This was pretty cool. It starts off a little kind of Optimus Prime, before he's Optimus Prime, he's Orion Pax. He's like, oh, gee, Megatron, my best friend ever. Oh, yes, Orion Pax, you are also my best friend. Gee, wouldn't it be cool if we weren't minors and we could go out and grab the world by the tail and become somebody? Let's go do that. I don't know, Orion. That seems like it'd be very difficult. I mean, we're just minors after all. It's that kind of story. But then as it goes on, you see the characters. You know that Optimus Prime and Megatron are, like Batman and Joker. They're going to hate each other, become enemies eventually. But I actually kind of like the transition to, the Orion Pax into the, I'm the leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime. Watching Megatron take his turn into like a full-on villain mode. That's pretty good. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but I did. And just goes to show you can make Transformers movies without a bunch of, primarily ancillary human characters. The fact that Michael Bay came out with the movies that he did, I remember a lot of people were like, what do you expect? It's a Transformers movie. I expect this. I expect Transformers 1. Oh, it's just based on a toy. How good could it be? It can be this good and probably even better. But
look, kids will love this movie, right? Kids?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
All right.
If they have any sort of passing fascination with Transformers, they'd eat this up. But I even think that a grown adult such as myself that grew up on Transformers had been waiting since the Transformers, the movie, for a good Transformers. And by the way, Bumblebee wasn't it? I know people are like, I love Bumblebee. I'm like, this is an indie porn with a Transformer in it. I don't care. Granted, the opening scene was awesome, but beyond that, Bumblebee can kick rocks too. But yeah, this was
what
fun.
About Eric, in all seriousness though, what about fans of Transformers with those ancillary human beings? Do you think they'll find a new appreciation for Transformers by watching this movie? It's so good they can't deny it, and maybe they might rethink like, hey, I love these. I loved all of these human movies. Look how good they are without the humans. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think anyone that watches the Michael Bay Transformers movies came away from it going, you know what my favorite part was? The human character. And Grant, we just talked about one of them. I forget his name already. That guy from Amber Alert.
Oh, Tyler James Williams?
Kevin Dunn.
Oh, yeah, Kevin Dunn was in one of those. Okay.
Him and the mom and they were fine comedy relief or whatever. I'm not going to Transformers movie. Like, okay, make Kevin Dunn one of the voice actors of one of the Transformers, and I'm in.
He has a great voice. Yeah, Kevin Dunn has a great voice.
But this just goes to show that, like, I think this is someone that made a Transformers movie that's like knows what people that want to go see a Transformers movie is looking for. Now, granted, didn't need an origin story. I would have preferred a different Transformers story, but for what they told and what we got, this is like miles better than it had any right to be.
Very good. So that is Transformers 1.
Yeah.
A huge.
It's still a 3.5 movie, but like I was expecting this to be like a 1 star.
Oh, okay. So 3.5.
Yeah, this went way above my expectations. Still didn't make it to 4 stars, but still pretty good.
Okay, 3.5 stars for Eric Holmes for Transformers 1, currently out in theaters. So that is up. That is it for part 1 of CinemAddicts, at least for this episode. We're going to kick it over to Bruce Purkey over the Cinematic, as he will have reviews for you of the movies. Let's see what he's got. He will review Will and Harper, and look, he's going to get Andrew Steele's name correct. And I bet you he will.
We hope.
We hope. Okay, so we'll see. Eric, again, you need to feed him those kibble. It gives him some good vitamins.
Right, yeah.
Bruce Purkey will also review a documentary called The Body Politic. And he will, what else? Yes, and he will also review Lee. He will also review Lee. Oh, gosh, I wish he was going to review Amber Alert. That would have been cool. But again, for further reviews on Will and Harper, Lee, and what? I was going to say Amber Alert. Will and Harper, Lee, and we're doing so many movies, and what?
The Body Politic.
The Body Politic, yeah.
I'd actually I'd be curious to see what Bruce thinks of Amber Alert. I wonder if he's going to, like, I could see Bruce watching Amber Alert and be one of the people that would just kind of point out all the obvious flaws in it and focus on that.
You think I think he'd probably give Amber Alert 3 stars, maybe? He's saying it was well done. You think?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, probably not well done. Like, I think he would focus more on the parts that I kind of overlooked, but yeah.
Okay.
You go watch Amber Alert. Tell us what you think. Because I think there's going to be some people like us that can overlook all that. And then there's going to be other ones of you that's like, this is stupid. They did this. That didn't make sense. And I get it. I just didn't care.
Okay, guys. So that is it. We've had a long episode of a very interesting episode of 261 of interesting movies. We also did Patreon. We're going to do a part 2 in a couple of moments. But before we go, Eric Holmes, why do you think CinemAddicts episode 262 is going to be a banger? Can you tell our listeners what to expect for next week? Why you're excited? In all fairness, you weren't that excited about this week. You're really excited for next week. And so tell our listeners what they have to look forward to.
Well, we have VHS Beyond. We've seen a couple of the VHS movies, and they've been, at worst, completely enjoyable. We got the new Steve Kostanski, director of Psycho Gorman, their new movie Frankie Frico.
You've already seen, right?
Can't talk about it right now.
Okay.
We have Operation Blood Hunt. No idea what that is, but it's called Operation Blood Hunt. So it sounds like a movie that it's probably in our wheelhouse.
You know who's the director?
Operation Blood Hunt's going to be one of those movies that me and you love it, and Bruce is going to hate it. And so those are
totally not getting. Bruce is totally not getting a screener link for that. Okay,
he should because I love it when Bruce like me and you fawn over like these kind of movies, and then Bruce like, what the hell is wrong with you guys?
You know, whenever we fawn over these movies, I think Bruce, especially with lacking any kind of kibble, as a cinematic, he dies every single day when we give these movies such good reviews.
Well, Bruce, if you start loving movies like Operation Blood Hunt, I'll think about refilling your food bowl. But until then, no dice.
Well, unfortunately, Eric, you have no idea about Operation Blood Hunt. It sounds good for you, but it's directed by this actor, filmmaker. His name is Louis Mandylor. He's the director of that. All right, so you're excited.
Spoiler alert: 6.9 stars.
6.9 stars. Also, we have to mention.
And yes, last but not least, and this will probably be the top one of next week. New Quentin Dupieux movie, Dali.
Yes, Dali. Which Eric can't say if he's seen it or not. Okay,
maybe I've seen it. I don't know. We'll talk about it next week. But next week is going to be. And what's Take Cover? I don't know what Take Cover is.
Right? Take Cover because it's another Scott Adkins movie.
Oh, Jesus.
So we have a big one, 262.
VHS I'm just going to predict this now. VHS Beyond is going to be my least favorite, but that's probably still going to be 4 stars. That's what I'm predicting.
All right, so we're gonna
banger season starts next week.
It starts next week on CinemAddicts episode 262. We are out, and of course, before we get to Bruce, here's Claire.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining CinemAddicts.
Welcome back to the Cinematic, the attic that I am kept in by Eric and by Greg because they are mean to me. I don't know why they have to do this to me. This week, I have 3 features. I don't know how many they have, probably 8. Only 3 and no recommends. Once again, that is because this week we are also doing the 2017 edition of our Patreon, which includes 2 movies. I won't talk about them right now, but that will explain why I only have 3 other movies for the main episode. We have a Terrified, not Terrifier, but Terrified, which is Damien Rugna's earlier movie than When Evil Lurks. And we also have The Florida Project. That'll be coming up soon, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, especially if you are a Patreon member. If you're not a Patreon member and you really want to hear about those movies or other movies a different year each month, then check out our Patreon, $5 catch-all. Anyway, this week, 3 features. We have got a movie called Lee. We've got a movie called, sorry, I've got to make sure I got my notes here, The Body Politic. And you're going to hear the notes rustling around here. And we also have Will and Harper. And kind of like last week, I can go from worst to best, I suppose. But, I mean, they're all pretty solid. We've had kind of a good run of, indie movies and kind of out of the mainstream movies. So if you're thinking that you're in kind of the doldrums because, summer's just ending and we're waiting for the award season to start, you might check out the fact that this is a pretty good season for indie movies. So, okay, let's get into it. We have got, first up, let's see, what am I going to pick here? What do we consider the worst of the good movies? Let's say The Body Politic. The Body Politic is a documentary directed by Francis Paz. Now, I don't know if it's Goodenough or Good Enough. Good Enough sounds like a fake name, but I'm thinking it might be Goodenough. All right. And this is a documentary that takes place mostly around 2021, I would say, 2020, 2021. Basically what it's about Brandon Scott. He was one of the youngest city council presidents in Baltimore history, and you may have heard his name because he also became, in 2020, the mayor of Baltimore. Now, Baltimore has long been plagued, for anyone who's ever watched The Wire or just the news in general, Baltimore has long been plagued by violence, especially gun violence. It's kind of been in various elements or various degrees of economic downturn and drugs and just all the usual things that'll plague in a big metropolitan city, but especially the gun violence. And they make a point of how, I think when this is starting around 2020, that Baltimore had like around over 300 murders in a year, which was degrees greater than like New York, which is a much huger city. So it's kind of pointing out that for the size of the city, the crime rate, especially the murder rate and the gun violence rate, was very, very high. So one of the main platforms here that Brandon Scott is trying to run on is how do we take a different approach? What do we do differently to change this, gun violence, murder, shooting culture throughout their city? How do we attack that? How do we change that? You got to remember, context-wise, this is also in the midst of the last election cycle. This is when you have George Floyd happening. This is when you have defund the police is a big kind of a rally cry. And this would kind of be what you see here with Brandon Scott is you kind of see a concrete example of someone trying what has kind of become known as defund the police. Now, that's a really controversial term, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. You're just going to take money away. You're not going to give money to the police so they can do their job. And that is kind of the generic version of that idea. But the other version of the idea is that what we are expecting and what we are having our police do and what we're asking our police to do is actually in some ways beyond what they really should be doing, beyond their scope. And it's causing a lot of damage, and it's causing a lot of things in the community to be approached in sometimes more destructive ways than constructive ways. Once again, it's not saying the police are really at fault. It's that we are expecting the police to do a bunch of stuff that really they're not equipped to do. And the point is that it's kind of like the military or anything in the the U.S. government, right? I mean, huge percentage of the money of the budget is going to that. But is that the way we should best spend our money, or should it be divided up in different ways? That's kind of in a nutshell what the approach is. So when he gets in office, his approach is he's going to try to get funding, and he's going to try to do things where, and I can't describe it in detail because it's more interesting just to kind of watch what he does. But his approach is you've got to get people down in these communities, the communities that are most at risk. And you have to, one, find the people who are most at risk to perpetrate this violence, and two, find the people who are most at risk of being the, the targets of this violence. And one of the big takeaways they get in this movie is that the narrative has kind of always been, you've got all these drugs, and you're just going to lead to crime, and the crime is just going to lead to, murder and blah, blah, blah. And sure, that can happen, but they kind of look and they find in the overall general cause of a lot of this gun violence is actually just conflicts between people. And they bring up the example of like, what if you have, two guys that are, one guy's dating a woman and then she goes has an affair with another guy. Well, now guy number one is, angry and going to try to get revenge on guy number two. And guy number two gets shot by guy number one. And then guy number two's family is mad. They go after, this kind of revenge, you wouldn't say petty, but relatively petty to be shot for. And they're finding a lot of that. So they're trying to find these people, target them, when they see these kind of situations occur and de-escalate and try to give options outside of the violence. Now, it might sound like pie in the sky, but this is like the approach. He said, we've got to try this. And this whole movie is kind of about that approach. And as a politician, someone he is, I should say, from the get-go, he's willing to probably never get reelected again because he knows that this is going to be unpopular no matter what with a huge percentage of people. But his whole approach is, what we have going on now is obviously not working. We need to try something new. So as far as that goes, I think it's kind of interesting. It's interesting to see a really young person trying to change some of these big systemic problems. It's frustrating to watch because, like anything, people want instant solutions, and he knows it's not an instant solution. So he's constantly fighting people to stick with it, which is very hard in this day and age to get people to stick with anything that doesn't show them immediate results. And then on top of that, you see his battles with the powers that be. A perfect example is the governor of the state of Maryland is hardcore. I don't want to say necessarily MAGA, but he's hardcore, right wing, strength, smash down the criminals. Just more, all we need is more cops, then more militarized cops, more people in prison. That's going to solve this problem. You're just not throwing that at it. And on top of that, the governor talks a big game, but he refuses to even talk to the mayor of Baltimore. And the mayor of Baltimore, you see multiple times trying to get these conversations. And it's a really interesting movie, I think. It gets on the ground, and it really you get to know the people, the activists, the people within the mayor's kind of efforts. You get the people that are on the ground there working with him, as well as himself. So it kind of becomes more about that effort and that community, even more than it is about him per se. So I'm going to say 3.5 on this. Really solid documentary. I think the only thing it lacks is possibly a bit more scope. I could see this being longer, or I would like to see this movie, this exact topic, over like 10 years. Because just like the problem in this movie is that you can't see whether the efforts have a long-lasting result. You also don't get the quick results. So in that aspect, just like the people who are unsatisfied, it makes it a little bit more unsatisfying as a movie. But that's kind of the point too. Anyway, it's a solid documentary. I would say 3.5 on the body politic. Second one I've got here is a movie called Lee, like Lee, like the name. That is for Lee Miller, who is an actual historical figure. This is a biopic. This has probably, you'd say, Oscar hopes written all over it. Directed by Ellen Kuras. Lee is the story of Lee Miller, once again, played by Kate Winslet. You also have Alexandra Skarsgård here as her longtime love, Roland. You have Audrey Withers, played by Andrea Riseborough, who we love. She's not a big role in here, but she's here. And the other kind of main name that you'll know here is Andy Samberg in a rare serious role. He's playing it pretty straight in this movie. Andy Samberg playing David E. Sherman. All right, and what this is basically, it's the story, like I said, of Lee Miller, and she is now known as a groundbreaking war photographer, especially from World War II, most notably. And this is kind of her story. And the framing device here is, and as you can imagine, a woman as a war photographer or war journalist is not really a thing that's happening back in the era of World War II. Just women aren't seen to do those kind of roles. They're not seen as being part of war. They should be at home, supporting the boys as they come back home and, supporting the home front and that kind of stuff. And she is obviously not that kind of person. The basic concept is you've got her at the beginning. Here's the setup. The framing device is essentially that there's a younger man, and he seems to be interviewing her, going through her photos, interviewing her, and as he's showing her the photos and interviewing her, you are seeing flashbacks, and the flashbacks are going generally chronologically from kind of just before World War II to kind of to the point towards the end of the war when she's doing the work that basically will make her famous and is the most notable work of her career. But her beginnings are, once again, I'll just say, they don't have a little bit, maybe too much at the front end of this, of kind of just her, kind of what her lifestyle is early on. She's a, kind of more of a socialite in the art and photography world, hanging out with names, if you know these names like Man Ray, very famous photographer from that era. She's working for Vogue. I think at this time she's working for British Vogue. I don't know if there's like European Vogue separate from that. I'm not sure. I know there's an American Vogue. I don't know. Either way, she's working for Vogue, and she's doing a lot more like glamour photography and fashion photography. And she even points out at one point that, she, even though she's enjoying it, she's kind of feels like that's a little bit shallow for her, even though that's fine, but she doesn't seem quite satisfied enough. She's a very bold character, and you very immediately kind of discover like she's doesn't suffer fools. She's ready to go out. Anyway, she gets this relationship with Roland, as I mentioned. He's a painter, so they're kind of living this bohemian lifestyle, and of course, World War II starts. And once again, we keep flashing back and forth. So we'll see maybe kind of the making of one of her famous photographs. You don't really know at the time, but then you see, oh, that's a photograph that she took, depending on how much you know about her photographs. And I've seen a few of hers, didn't really know necessarily much history about them. And of course, the main meat and potatoes of this movie is early on, during like the Blitzkrieg and stuff, and when you're having all these air raids in England, she, being a photographer already, is drawn out into the streets, and she's drawn to take pictures of things that people aren't necessarily taking pictures of. The destruction and kind of the effect that that's having. And that draws her to want to go into combat. And once again, there's some pushback on that, and she eventually gets into combat. So the negative side of this movie is it's pretty meat and potatoes. It's pretty generic as far as the approach to a biopic. It's essentially just going to follow her and see what she does. And you don't get a ton into her character. Like, you do get somewhat in her character, but other than her being like, just kind of not taking no for an answer and just kind of being bold, I mean, that's pretty much what you get of her character. But that's okay. It's good enough because the story itself is pretty fascinating. And I would say I was enjoying it, but I wasn't thinking it was groundbreaking probably for the first half, but it still was drawing me through. But I would say the second half of the movie definitely pushed me forward higher on this movie. I think it starts to really draw you in once you kind of know her character pretty well. And once she teams up with the Andy Samberg character, and he's kind of like a photographer there with the military. And he kind of immediately kind of sees her talent and kind of starts helping her. And she is kind of resistant to that at first, being much more of a lone wolf. And she quickly seems to get trust of him. And she's trusting him so that she and he kind of team up. And you can kind of sense that he knows she's the big dog. He knows that she's actually the true talent, even though he has his own talent. And he essentially becomes kind of her assistant, essentially. It's not ever stated, but they both seem to kind of know that that's the role that they're in. And he's a pretty great kind of solid character to kind of follow with her throughout this experience. We'll say that her most famous work is of the Holocaust in Auschwitz and some photos she takes surrounding Hitler's house, or not house, but his apartment. So if you don't know those photos, I would say watch the movie. It's pretty great and fascinating. And then go back and see the actual photos, and it's pretty great. There's a few really, really famous movies, or not movies, but famous photos that are kind of the origin of are shown here. Pretty good, solid movie. I'd say 4 stars on this. This is one of those movies you definitely could see getting a little Oscar buzz if it were a little flashier or maybe a little closer to the Oscars. So it'll probably get forgotten, except maybe Kate Winslet might get a little note here. Maybe some production or some costume stuff. And I think this is one of those movies that definitely is like, this is like you watch this with your mom or dad, and they're going to be like fully on board because it's not ever too shocking. It's not ever too gross, but it has some gravitas. And it has some pretty great moments. All right. The last one we've got is going to be called Will. Sorry, I'm getting my notes out. Will and Harper. Will and Harper is going to be on Netflix. I think by the time you hear this, it'll probably just be coming out. I think it's coming out this Friday, the 27th, if I'm correct. Hopefully I'm right. Will and Harper, directed by Josh Greenbaum. Josh Greenbaum, I looked up, and I think they've done a few movies, mostly like comedies. I think they did like Barb and Star, Go to Vista Del Mar, and some other things. So mostly known for comedy. This is a documentary, and it's got a bit of buzz, mostly because of the names involved. Obviously, the most famous name is going to be Will Ferrell. So what is the basic concept of this? The concept is, this documentary is that Will Ferrell, a few years ago, I don't remember what day, I didn't write down the actual year, but I'm going to say it was, it was like during the end of the pandemic kind of era, or during the pandemic. Will got a note, and a bunch of friends of this person got the note from a Harper, previously known as Andrew Steele. I just want to make sure I know. Harper basically saying to their friends that they have kind of finally come to the decision that they are going to transition. And this person, Harper's like 60 something, so pretty late in life to be transitioning, but something the person has been considering and working through years and years and years and years and years. And they kind of point out that basically Harper has been friends with Will Ferrell for 30 years, since early SNL. And they were kind of, Harper was a writer mostly for SNL, but for other stuff too, and was involved with a ton of the things that basically made Will Ferrell famous, a lot of the skits and a lot of the movies, and Harper was a writer for a lot of that stuff. So they kind of had a real simpatico kind of sense of comedy and sense of humor and stuff. So they really, really got along well. And Harper also had this great, Harper's around, so I'm not saying past tense, but in the past, Harper always had shown a great interest also in just kind of traveling around the United States, just traveling and going to the weird hole in the wall kind of places, and just meeting people and just doing stuff, kind of Andrew Bourdain kind of stuff, right? Not filming it, but just loved going out and just seeing like the real people in the real places in weird little spots in the U.S. Just kind of loved that kind of hit the road and meet the people on the ground kind of a thing, right? So anyway, basically the idea, they transitioned, and they essentially come up with this idea that Will and Harper decide they're going to make a cross-country trip and go to some of these places that Harper loves. But now that Harper's transitioned, Harper's like, how will it be? Like, will I be accepted? Will I feel uncomfortable even going there anymore? So in a sense, Harper's kind of saying like, I'm afraid to go out in the world this way. I don't feel comfortable, but I want to. And I hope I haven't lost kind of a big part of my life, but that by using Will as kind of a shield, as kind of a safety blanket, I can go to these places and at least, dip my toe in and have this kind of, fame blanket next to me, right? So that's kind of the approach. The whole movie, though, is I keep wanting to say gentle. The approach is very kind and gentle. It's like, it isn't attacking. It isn't either side. It's more like you're seeing Harper basically dip her toes into the world as Harper in a way that hopefully will not be too scary. And in that sense, Will Ferrell is very gentle back. And if, is there a staginess to it? Well, somewhat, because obviously every place they go, here's Will Ferrell and there's a camera. So obviously that's going to affect where they go. Are people going to be overall nicer and a little less in your face, especially on the negative side? Probably. So is it absolutely reality in that sense? Probably not. But the stuff between Will and Harper, nonetheless, I think is valuable, because I think the stuff that's between them, and a lot of it is just, like Harper and Will going to Harper's mom's house, and they're talking about what he was like when he was as a boy, and how he never felt like that, and how there's just some really interesting moments, like how society basically beat the boy into him, you know what I mean? When that's not what he really was feeling. And the fact, obviously, this is such a huge hot button societal issue right now, and how so many people really have it in their guts to just attack on this subject for no reason. Oh, there's reasons. Oh, okay, I can hear the other side out there. This movie, I think what it does best is it just shows two people who have known each other for years, who love each other's company, who are just kind of going through this together. And in a sense, they're letting Will, and they're letting Will be kind of the the everyday person who maybe doesn't quite understand or doesn't quite feel comfortable with transitioning and just the whole thing, and like doesn't know what to ask, doesn't know how to talk. And because Harper's so comfortable with Will, it's okay. And it actually helps work through that. Whereas if it's some Joe Blow off the street that walks up and just says like, what the hell are you? Or that kind of a thing, that's a whole different story, right? Because then you're looking at a person who's essentially coming at you with attack in their eyes. Great moments in this, some really heartwarming moments. There is a great running bit. So early on, they're like, we need a theme song, you know. Of course, they're constantly meeting different people from SNL because they've known them forever. They're having little cameos throughout this movie, which is fine. It's not needed, but it kind of gets it that little star power, of course, and is going to draw some people through that wouldn't have enough just with Will and Harper. But there's this great thing where about, I don't know, a third of the way in, they call Kristen Wiig and they're like, we need a theme song. And there's a whole little joke around it. Of course, they're creating a joke, you know, like it's got to be jazzy and it's got to be, you know, it's got to be emotional, but it's also got to be funny. And it's so basically they ask her the impossible to basically make this a great theme song for this show. And, you know, all through the movie, they're calling her and like, no pressure, but, you know, we're almost done with this trip. You better get it to us. And, you know, she's just doesn't have anything for him. And then that will pay off in the closing credits. You're going to hear the song she made. And that's pretty great, kind of fun wraparound in this movie. And there's a lot of great moments. And once again, I think just discovering it, I think it's satisfying as a road trip. It's satisfying as an emotional friendship journey. And I think it's also satisfying on a political hot button issue, sort of a more, like I said, a more honest, frank, and really understanding, really empathetic kind of discussion of what it means to feel like the other and feel like the outsider and to try to be accepted and feel safe in the world. And I think that's a huge issue for a lot of people, especially in the current climate we have right now. So I give this movie, I wonder if Eric or Greg saw this. I think Greg was considering it. I bet you he'll give it at least 4 stars. I'm kind of between 4 and 4.5. I think I'm going to go 4.5 stars in this because I think just the work it's doing is so important that I'm going to half star it up. I think as just the movie itself, it's probably like 4 stars, but this is such an easy movie to see too. It's so accessible, which I think is really important for something like this. This is something that could easily be lost in just like a indie movie that never sees any light anywhere. But being on Netflix, hopefully it will get more light and having a name attached to it. And I think this is the kind of movie that could actually help people because, and Eric talks about this a lot, when it's a real hot button, controversial issue, the movie that makes it for whatever side, usually the side you want to draw in is never going to watch the movie, so it will actually never have the effect you want. This movie could, because I think it's approachable for mom and pop America, and it's got people you know, a lot of people will like come and say, well, I like Will Ferrell because I liked him in this or I liked him in that. Even if you don't like his comedy, it's like, oh, seems like a nice dude. And it's presented in a way that's not super threatening to people who are very scared of that kind of stuff. So I think this movie could actually do what you want to do, and that is get people who aren't comfortable or don't understand or feel really pushed off by the idea of trans rights and so on and so forth to actually look at a human being and maybe get something out of that. Anyway, so I think it's a really good movie. 4.5 stars. 3 good movies this week. All right, guys, we will be back next week with a bunch of movies. I know that one of them is by the director of Psycho Gorman, and it's called Frankie Frico. Look for that next week. I think we might also have a movie coming up called Dolly by the director, I can't remember his name now, I lost it, by the director of Rubber, and also, what was it? Oh my God, Deerskin. I'm trying to remember all the movies we've seen of him recently. He made a bunch of, Smoking Causes Coughing. Oh my gosh, he's this great French director. Quentin Dupieux. Dolly, I think that's coming out next week too. So we should have at least a couple interesting oddball movies, if not more. Talk to y'all soon.